Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well. Okay, it's already the second week of 2025, so I hope you guys had a nice end of year break and happy new year. And yes, I'm still going to try to finish the series whenever I get the chance. It is what it is and I'm here now, so let's get right into the recap of week 16 of my 2024 Gold Coast Marathon training. Week 16 is also the first week of the 3-week taper block for the race. Just a reminder that the taper block involves training at more or less the same intensity that we've been doing throughout the many weeks of training so far, but instead of less volume and gradually reduce mileage in general, all the way up to race day, so that we're hopefully well rested, fit and fresh for the marathon race itself. We might lose a tiny bit of fitness by the time we reach race day, but we'll likely be fresh enough to make up for it and even more anyway, as it's better to be slightly undercooked than overcooked for race day. Okay, so Monday is just 10 kilometers of recovery on grass. I'm still at Bankstown City Sports Complex. I took it quite chill as usual. Tuesday was supposed to be some intervals. It was supposed to be 5x600 meters at 5k race pace with some jog recovery in between for about 14 kilometers in total, including the warm-up and cool down. But I ended up joining OPRC in the evening for the Track Tuesday instead, which was like a pyramid style interval session. So it was like 400, 800, 1200, 1600, and then down to 1200, 800, 400, all with 90 seconds of rest in between each rep. Overall, the session went fairly well, but I went a bit more conservative than I normally would, as I don't run too well in the evenings and didn't want to risk a stitch or some issues either. This session is also when I started to feel the side of my right calf play up a bit, but I'll go into more about that a bit later. Wednesday was a 23-kilometer medium long run. I did it around Sopan Creek Reserve. This time I tried something different in terms of how I wear my watch after seeing Stefan give it a try sometime on a long run. He used to often struggle with some inconsistent or wild heart rate data, and I also noticed my heart rate data seemed a bit more off during the cold days of winter. So the idea was to wear the watch on the inside of the wrist so that the heart rate sensor is on the inside, and after I gave it a try, the heart rate data seemed a bit more stable, which sort of makes sense as the veins might be more visible there than on the outside of the wrist normally, and there's 2 or 3 veins that you can see, I guess. Just to be clear, the optical heart rate sensors on watches will still not be as responsive or accurate compared to an actual chest strap, which features little contact patches that can detect and measure your pulse via electric signals emitted by your heart. But I guess it was still interesting to try out anyway. Since then, I've tried the inside wrist orientation a few times on some runs, and it's been pretty decent actually, or at least good enough for me. Thursday was a recovery run with some strides at the end. I did about 11 k's in total, so 10 kilometers on grass and then 6 strides on the footpath nearby. I think the strides might have made the calf thing a tiny bit worse. It was doable, but I could tell something was slightly off. Friday was another 10 kilometer recovery run. I just did it on grass, and the run was also doable, but I could still feel the calf thing a tiny bit, which wasn't great. And then Saturday was supposed to be an 8 to 10k tune-up race, but there was really no race scheduled that day, and it was raining very heavily with big winds, and I also didn't feel like going to parkrun either. So I just kept it super local and did an 8k tempo to threshold effort on pavement around Bankstown Oval. I wore my Puma DV8 Nitro Elite 2s for this run, mostly for the solid traction in the rain, although all that running through the puddles made me quite nervous about the slight calf strain. And again, the calf strain wasn't too bad and didn't really affect the run too much, but it was definitely noticeable at this point. And then finally Sunday was a 27-kilometer long run towards Riverwood and M5 Linear Park and back. Fortunately, it wasn't rain that day, but since it rained the day before, I figured it'd be a good chance to wear my Sock Endorphin Leads, which were potentially my race shoes of choice, and test out its traction on some wet surfaces, especially at around Mara effort. So I didn't slip too much during the long run, but I wouldn't say the grip is as solid as Puma Grip or Continental for Adidas, or what's even on the Nike Vapor Free, for example, all of which I've tested on rain days before and performed pretty well. And it also wasn't rain that day either, so it's possible that the results for the Endorphin Leads could have been worse if it actually rained. Overall, the traction was mostly fine on dry surfaces, although it didn't seem too confidence inspiring on wet surfaces, but still probably good enough to get the job done, even if it rains on race day, or at least that's what I'm hoping for from that little test. The long run was also to test if my calf strain would hold out in the event that it wouldn't improve much by race day, which seemed to be okay enough in those shoes somehow. Anyways, the total mileage for the week was about 105 kilometers. Still a big week, but noticeably less volume than the previous recent weeks due to the start of taper. At this point, I was still feeling mostly fit, but getting quite nervous about the calf strain. Anyways, while I'm on that topic, let me quickly go into a bit more detail about the injury. Just to be clear, I'm not a physio or exercise or rehab specialist at all. I'm just basically recounting my own experiences in dealing with the injury. So it's basically the same injury that I got in October 2023, which I went through in the first episode of this whole Gold Coast series, but this time it was on my right leg rather than left leg like last time. I didn't get it checked up last time, nor did I get it checked up this time, and to this day I still don't know exactly what it was, but I believe it was early stages of tendonitis of some kind on the outside of the calf, which seems to be either the peroneus longus or brevis after checking some anatomy charts and diagrams. So it kind of felt like the side of my calf was a bit tender and inflamed, and it's like a dull soreness that you feel every step while running, though I didn't really feel it while walking at least. Nothing sharp or crazy pain by any means, but definitely noticeable and can put you out of running if it gets worse. In terms of how and why it happened, I'm still not entirely sure, but what I suspect is a combination of the following. So firstly, I had all these recent high mileage weeks, anywhere from 100 to 120 kilometers a week, which wasn't super intense by any means, but still enough mileage to increase wear and tear and like therefore risk of injury. There was going fast on the massive downhill sections at the Kurungai Chase Fun Run, which I feel requires heaps of stability and like ankle strength for confident footing, especially paired with like wearing the endorphin leads, which are a super high stack shoe and may have masked my weaknesses at the time. And then there was wearing the endorphin Pro 3s on the Track Tuesday. Again, the stack is quite tall, and for me personally, it generally feels a bit unstable and wobbly on the track, especially on the curves, I guess, which might overload the stabilizers on the side of my calf. So probably not the cause of the injury, but definitely made things worse at the time. And then there was like Saturday's tempo run in the rain. Running through fairly deep puddles wasn't a great idea. I didn't slip at all, but I could feel my legs working overtime to keep things stable, which again probably made things worse at the time. Either way, the injury happened anyway, and fortunately it was still in the early stages, so at the time I was still able to run and train through it, but maybe at like 90 to 95% performance at most, or like around 2 out of 10 pain at most, which of course can still get worse over time. Since I already experienced this injury before, knew what it felt like and what the recovery and rehab process sort of involved, I knew it wouldn't really improve or get entirely better anytime soon unless I took like an entire week off to like reduce the inflammation and then slowly incorporate rehab work, increase running volume and intensity and so on, which ideally probably would have taken at least 2 to 3 weeks at that stage to get better. So I really wasn't sure what to do at this point, and looking back, this may have been a mistake, but I ended up choosing to just train through it while trying to keep it under control. So this included like extra massage and light mobility work, plus some resistance work as well specific to this injury, which for the most part worked well enough, and the calf tendon never really went above like 2 out of 10 in terms of inflammation, pain or soreness, but at the same time I could tell there's like a small performance and confidence hit, and also that it won't get fully better until I actually took time off. So it was kind of a gamble for the final 3 weeks of the training and taper, and I was really hoping that 1, it would hold together by race day, and 2, that I'll be able to let it fully heal after the Gold Coast Marathon was over. And so long story short, I ended up continuing to train through it for the final 3 weeks of taper, while also nursing it as much as I could with what I knew to keep the damage at bay somehow. And for the most part, it went alright. I was still able to get the training done and get to the start line at maybe 95% calf condition at best, and race well enough without it flaring up as well. And then after the Gold Coast Marathon was over, I was able to let it recover in the following week, and it's been all good since then. But looking back now, I think it might have been better to just like take a week off entirely at the time and just let it recover, especially since it was still in the early stages, and I probably wouldn't have lost much fitness at all versus trying to train through it and risk making it worse. Somehow it turned out alright, I guess, but definitely some lessons learned there. And then following the Gold Coast Marathon was the 2024 Sydney Marathon just 10 weeks later. And unfortunately, I also got an injury right before taper for Sydney, but this time it was sort of accidental, and I basically rolled my ankle during the commute or like warm up for the 2024 Sydney half at Sydney Park. So the plan was to jog to the starting area from Lidcombe Station, which was about 2.5 kilometers away. It was quite a dark morning early on, and although I know the route quite well since I've been along it many times, I wasn't too alert or awake, mostly from poor sleep the night before. So somehow I kind of slipped a bit and rolled my ankle on some sandy or gravelly section about 2 kilometers in on Burnie Avenue. It might have been on that one pit lid around it actually. It didn't feel too bad at the time, but I already knew something was slightly off. Anyways, I ended up racing the half well enough and somehow I held it together, at least until the last few kilometers where I felt it flare up a bit, but nowhere enough to make me have to stop. However, it got pretty bad after the race during the cool down. At the point, it didn't feel like a super serious injury by any means, as I was still able to walk and all, but I wasn't able to run comfortably at all, even at my usual slower paces, which wasn't a good sign at all. So this time, I made the choice to take a week off from running to let it recover and get better. Fortunately, there were 3 weeks left before the Sydney Mara, which was going to be my taper anyway, so I felt like there wasn't any fitness to gain and not much to lose either. The injury actually got a bit worse in the following 2 days or so, and I wasn't sure what it was, but the lower part of the shins that connects to the foot felt quite tender and sore, and after looking into it a bit, I think it quickly became tibialis anterior tendonitis or something. But I just took plenty of rest as needed for the rest of the week with lots of massage, and slowly added some extra strengthening and mobility exercises for the ankle and tibialis, while adding in some more walking volume as well, and it felt basically fine by the following week. Looking back, it was definitely not an injury that I could have or would have trained through, and I'm a bit surprised that I was able to race through it at the half, but I guess I'm just grateful that it wasn't too serious by any means and was able to eventually run the 2024 Sydney Marathon just fine 3 weeks later. So those are some of my experiences of getting injuries before taper. It's never great, especially when the race we're training for is just a few weeks away or like right around the corner. Some injuries might be quite minor, but some might also be quite serious too and take ages to come back from. We can try to be super prepared and careful, stick to a plan, do heaps of strengthening and mobility work, but an injury might happen anyway, and sometimes accidentally as well. Sometimes we might also make whimsical decisions or like do silly things in training, but that's just part of human nature, I guess. Of course, I wouldn't want to anticipate or expect injuries to happen all the time, but I wouldn't want to think that doesn't happen either. So over the years, I feel like I've acknowledged to myself that injuries are just part of the running journey, that there's something that can happen that we can actually reduce the chances of and also likely overcome too if it happens. So I don't have too much advice in that regard. I guess we just have to like listen to our body and get it checked up when we think something's up, especially during the early stages and certainly before it gets worse. And we should also try to get stronger in general, learn from our own injury experiences and from others too, and maybe even share experiences with others when it's applicable. Anyways, that's all I have to say for now. I gotta go now, so thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye.